right, Jeffrey Korzenik, I'm going to call you Jeff to save that syllable you just talked about. Welcome to the Leaders Who Care series.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun on this, and I think with your background and your experiences, the audience is going to get a lot of value out of this. Not to put too much pressure on you, but but I think they will. So, always the best place to start is if you can briefly introduce yourself. I'm not talking about the business part first, about who's Jeff, family, where you're from originally, where you are now, maybe something you've never told anybody else ever. You want to reveal it here and now, stuff like that.
I think I might pass on the revelation of deep, dark past, but let's go with the present. I've been married. This will be my 34th wedding anniversary. We have two boys. One is in the Marines. One's in LA, starting a filmmaking career. I live in St. Petersburg, Florida, though I have a home in Marblehead, Massachusetts, and spend a lot of time up north, especially in the hot summer months. And just walked in on me is our Vizsla puppy. So the other member of the
let us see. Can we see?
Hey, Chance, here. This is Chance the Yapper.
Hi, Chance.
Here we go, bud. Come here. Anyway, so
he's beautiful.
He's a good boy. He's a good boy. Okay, now he wants up. So anyway, we better carry on, or he'll be
That's fine. I've had, one thing from COVID that was really good. There were a few things. Is we realized not that you can have serious conversations and not take ourselves so seriously all the time.
Yeah.
I've had dogs jump on. I've had kids come in. Oh, good.
Yeah, it's funny. On one of my LinkedIn things, I actually posted a picture of the puppy, and so many people told me that was their favorite post of mine because, as I said, it humanized me.
Yeah, we all need. It does humanize. It does humanize. We don't have, people want to talk to real people that care and are you, and so it's good. So Chance, you're doing a great job over there.
Yeah.
So let's talk kids and teenagers then. What were you like? Were you since you're in financial services, were you the backer for some lemonade stand young entrepreneurs?
I was bookish, interested in science, somewhat mischievous, little bit of hung out with the other square pegs and round holes. And I think, many of us, what's interesting is I went to a high school called Loomis Chaffee in Connecticut. And a lot of us have been very successful, and a lot of us are still friends. I have friends that date back, a lot of my really good friends date back to high school, and one was most high school, and we go back to third grade. We were neighbors, and we see each other from time to time. A lot of this is reconnecting after not really being in touch for 20 years, but now we're in regular touch.
Yeah, it's fantastic. In a way, COVID spurred some of that on because people were looking and stuff like that. But I have an aunt, she's like a second mom in Montreal. She's told me she's now 95 3/4. But she would say it was so nice when everybody was in the same city, the same community, because the world's changed. So if you can keep in touch with all that, that's fantastic. Tell us about, let's start with your education journey.
Sure.
It was pretty unique. You were in arts and Near Eastern studies.
So I have an economics degree at Princeton and a couple other schools. That's an AB, not a BA. It's the Latin version. And then I have what is called a certificate of proficiency. It's similar to a minor in Near Eastern studies. And my concentration area was the Persian track, the Farsi. You had to pick a language track you were on. And then I was in the Russian studies program, didn't get the certificate there, but did all the course requirements. So I probably spent, for someone who is an economist by trade, I probably spent too much time outside the economics department and in the Russian studies program and in the Near Eastern studies program.
So what intrigued you to do that?
I think I love diversity and realizing there's this whole big world out there. And I love Russian literature. I love visiting the Middle East, and people approach the world differently. Yeah. And I don't know another word for it. The magnificence of the diversity of cultures on this planet is really something to celebrate and enjoy, and it just hooks me in.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. You know, we do need to embrace, you know, diversity and the different foods, the different cultures, the different, you know, idiosyncrasies, everything. It makes it more interesting. Something and
Yeah, and I took my family to Tunisia, my second trip there, and just because I wanted them to see different culture outside of the Judeo-Christian world that we live in, and it was a wonderful experience for all of us.
yeah, I find working in search and talent and whatnot, people with that international exposure, even if they're joining just even a domestic company, have an advantage because they just know how to engage differently. They know how to be more open. They just know and they listen.
Yeah, my first job out of college was in London for a small British startup that didn't quite start up, but I spent a year there and working for a British firm as opposed to many Americans will go and work for an American firm, and but I lived the cultural life of a British business person and the pay scale and the housing challenges and all those things that are different from going on a year abroad or going as a visitor or going as an American working for an American firm. So it was a great experience.
Yeah, well, then you can relate to your film actor son who's
Yeah,
through that now.
absolutely.
So, a little bit of a long question here. So, we founded Fifth Element on the premise that leaders and their organizations can do way better when they're doing good. I mean, you've definitely shown leadership, and congrats on outstanding book on Untapped Talent,
Thank
where
you.
you focus on how second chance hiring is good for business and
Right.
community. It's one of our key initiatives, as you know, we've talked about, and my background and whatnot. Can you share a little bit of your experiences, your findings, your insights on how it all impacts dignity and families of like
Oh.
formerly incarcerated, for example, and then the productivity of employees and businesses who end up working with them, et cetera, et cetera?
I approached this at first purely from the economic lens. We had a labor shortage coming, just looking at the demographic profile of the United States. And the solution had to lie in digging deeper into our population. And I started asking why we're missing people and came to the conclusion with social ills, long-term unemployment, the opioid epidemic, and justice impact. And then I started to understand that those are interrelated, but B, this justice impacted population is this incredibly overlooked population. And it's not that every one of them can be good employees. I think that's a really important distinction or a point to make. It's that there's processes that you can use as an employer to find who's ready to be a good employee and then to give them the tools to thrive. But what I've come to understand, and I say it still has to be based on that. It's got to be a business proposition because, for example, we have 19 million Americans with felony convictions. How do you possibly scale up solutions unless it makes monetary sense to do so? And it won't solve for all of those 19 million, but it will solve for many, and that will start to turn the tide. It will also free up more resources. So the ones who need more resources, either to protect public safety or need more resources to become employable, will free up those resources. But what is increasingly clear to me is that it's not just about helping the individual, it's turning families around, turning around multi-generational poverty, turning around communities that have been underinvested, neglected, and aren't, frankly, in many cases, safe. And it has to start with recognizing that we have an intergenerational problem. One of the best predictors of whether someone will grow up and go to prison is if they had a parent who was incarcerated. Right. And so you have to break that cycle somewhere. And the place to break it is by making sure that everyone who has done their time, right, paid their dues, is given a chance if they are ready for it. And then when you give them that chance, and if they can succeed, you break all of these terrible cycles that have become embedded in America.
It's interesting. I saw an interview a little while back. It's not really, it's related and not related, but I saw an interview of a young lady and they were talking to her about healthy eating and getting diabetes and all that stuff. And she said, my grandparents had diabetes, my parents have diabetes. I'm going to get it anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. There's a lot of fatalism in these communities. And normalization of non-normal, what we would consider non-normal behaviors. And it's hard to break, but the foundation for breaking all that is employment. Again, I have to stress, it's not employing everyone. People have to earn the right to be ready, but all too often, people who have paid their dues, are ready or can be made ready, want to turn their life around, never get that chance.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity of meeting formerly incarcerated people too, and I would say unless they're a serial killer or something ridiculous,
Yeah,
most of them are going to be the most loyal of all.
that's right. That's right.
And
We hear the term criminal and we assume, we make a character assumption. And the reality is that, most people, at least the first time they go into the justice system, they're not criminal masterminds, they're dumb kids or dumb young people. And you can't assume that a conviction defines the person.
yeah, it's interesting that happens in a lot of different aspects, good and bad, where a person's life is wrongly defined by one situation.
Yes. Yeah. And none of us would want to be judged by that. I mean, that's,
Exactly.
our worst moments. That's no way to live. And, all of us have had our worst moments, but they're generally not something that can come up in a background check. And that's the tragedy of having a criminal record. Is it is so, sometimes it's you can Google it. It's always available on a background check unless you can get it expunged or sealed or or pardoned. So, and even pardons, it'll still often show up. So this is a huge weight that we as a society have placed on people who, deserve consequences of their actions, but the punishment, unless it's a life sentence, it shouldn't be a life sentence, a de facto life sentence.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of this before, and it's come up in the political realm right now about, are we a racist country here in the U.S., and politicians answering that question, and some of them said we're not a racist country, and then people argue about it, and you can go either way. But I thought, I won't name names. One of them said that if she, well, that probably gave it away. If she if she grew up with her parents constantly harping on this is a racist country, then she would have felt that she had less chance to really push to achieve what she really did achieve after all. And I thought it was a brilliant answer. I understand people when they say, of course, a racist country, but it was pretty amazing.
I don't define this issue very much by race. I think that's a mistake. I think it's very much defined by poverty and broken homes and trauma in youth. And those are really, as someone who worked with data all the time, those are probably the real variables. And that being said, you have to recognize that the impact of all this has fallen disproportionately on certain communities. So look, this is just the numbers. 1 in 3 Black men in America has a felony conviction. So what happens, I believe, is that because those mistakes, usually made in youth, like everyone, become lifelong barriers to advancement, then the next generation doesn't have a model for how to be successful and how to work. And then the next generation, and so they get justice impacted. And then you go to the next generation, and whole communities, because of the concentration of justice impact, whole communities don't really have much of a idea of how you're supposed to work, right? How do I know to dress appropriately for a job? How do I know how to have conflict with a coworker or frustration in a career? I either had my parents or a friend of my parents or the parents of one of my friends to go to, and that's what I did all along. I had mentors or resources, and some of these communities don't have much of that in the way of resources. So again, it's you got to break these cycles, and employment is the key. Supported employment, right? Employment that understands that you can have a good worker and a great employee who just doesn't know what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Eager to learn, and that becomes the key to these models of success.
Yeah, I had a video once when I was doing some speaking on diversity, and it was they were having a meeting, and there was a woman in charge of the meeting, and there was another lady, and there was a black guy, I believe, and then there was a guy that had recently been hired from Middle East somewhere. And very long story short, she was talking and talking and talking and talking and led the meeting. The meeting was over, and she said to, I don't remember the guy's name, John, "Hey, I don't know what Amal is doing, because he's sitting there. He doesn't even look prepared. He's not asking any questions, he's not anything. Go talk to him." So the first mistake is she told him to go talk to him versus
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
Second mistake, he goes to him, and the guy says, "Where I come from, first of all, I'm not supposed to interrupt the lead of the meeting. I'm not supposed to interrupt a woman. There was no chance. I have all this stuff prepared and everything, and no chance, no chance to get ahead." And it kind of leads me to the point that you gave me a good segue on, as the other side, which is the employer. I'm talking about
Yeah.
the second chance. So it's all, we talk a lot about humanity. The fifth industrial revolution is supposed to be about humanity and all that. And you've even evangelized with all types of stakeholders, from the employees to
Yep.
the corporate leaders to the shareholders, government, etc. How do you see them, best minimizing conflict if you get somebody formerly incarcerated coming in, minimizing conflict, fear of
Yeah.
what's going on, and address onboarding and inclusion, and at the same time capitalize on the exciting and social impact potential for communities offering a second chance to people?
Right. It depends on which specific stakeholder groups, but I think one of the toughest points is, how do you bring in a second chance, fair chance hire, someone with a criminal record, to an organization that had at least de facto banned them before? And sometimes you don't do it publicly. Sometimes it's just another coworker, and you make sure that employee is equipped with, someone says, "Where'd you come from?" Right? That's a tough question. "Hey, you're at the water cooler. Hey, welcome aboard. Where were you before?" Right? And yeah, doing 20 years is a tough answer to provide.
Mm.
Um, so you often you can't, for companies like that, you have to go very slowly. And that's why often a pilot program at a specific location allows you to control that. I've seen some really innovative work done by companies who are adopting this, and you need the leadership, right? There's an answer. How do you get leadership comfortable? How do you get the implementers to change their practices? How do you adapt your background checks, or how people review them? But then you need kind of a cultural change in the organization. And
Mhm.
only certain cultures are even ready for this. But I'll give a shout out to Shaw Industries, the carpet maker. And here, this is a Berkshire Hathaway company. They don't suffer fools gladly, and yet they're adopting this. And they had support from the top. They sent their implementers to one of these cohort-based training programs. That one at the time was run by Dave's Killer Bread Foundation, which works on practices. But then they realized, we've got to get cultural acclimation here. And so they created a group, an advisory group, which drew people from the factory floor, supervisors, people from marketing and PR, and all sorts of people across the company. And they met. They actually, I'm very proud of this. They assigned my book as reading material, and they'll take like a chapter of the book,
Cool.
probably focus on reentry, and then they'll say, "Hey, let's talk about it." So it's a giant book group, but you have to do something that helps people understand the background that people are coming from. And I think that the key is appealing to our common shared values, that we should be a land of opportunity. That's our aspiration. I know I relate to this because my father is the son of very poor immigrants. My mother is a war refugee from Germany. So I knew intuitively that people come from very different positions, and you have to be very careful to judge. But people who are multi-generational, raised in wealthy suburbs, their circle is the country club, and that's fine. Look, I belong to some yacht clubs. I mean, nothing against that. That's great. But it's very hard to know what life is like for others, and so you have to address it. I guess the sliver of a silver lining of this awful opioid epidemic is, we now have people, particularly in certain geographies, who, no matter their socioeconomic class, know people who've been in prison because of addiction related crimes.
Yeah.
And so that has, that has meant, oh, this is not them, this is us.
Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, I think we both know a gal by the name of Shelley Winner.
Yeah, oh, I love Shelley. Yeah,
Yeah, when that story about, Microsoft wasn't so sure about hiring her.
yeah,
They,
yeah,
they ended up hiring her and did great. And we talked about veterans before. And there's a lot of veterans that are incarcerated, unfortunately, too, and
yeah,
homeless. But it's you're so right on when onboarding is a whole different ball game for different people. I mean,
yes,
it'd be like me, Canadian white Jewish guy having the same onboarding as a Black African woman, for example. It just
yeah,
you can't, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's not often, it's not always defined by religion, race, or
Yeah,
geography. It's just defined by personal life experience. I mean, people who've been through the foster care system, that's a tough system when age out of that system. We're getting better at it slowly, but all of these things we have to recognize and should recognize people are individuals and bring their own life stories, and it's a matter of meeting people where they are. The question for the business community is, why should I do that? Why I've built a business never doing that. And the reality is, and I think in my economic presentations, my single most consequential chart is the chart that shows the fertility rate of the United States declining from the
right.
baby generation when we were at 3.6 children per woman to today when we have 1.6. And those of the 3.6 fertility regime are retiring. They're still consumers. And how do we serve those consumers when you didn't have enough births 20 and 30 years ago? And the answer is you better do things differently. And hiring people with records is only one part of the solution. It's the solution that I like to tackle first because, frankly, it's the biggest solution because it's the most overlooked large demographic. But it also, in some sense, it's the toughest thing to tackle. But if you tackle it, everything else is easy. If you can find a pathway for the young man from Chicago convicted of gun crimes who has, a GED and 7 years of prison, and you can find a pathway for that young man, bringing back parents who left to raise children or take care of older, relatives, that's a piece of cake. Hiring veterans, piece of cake. And so you start with the big problem first.
Yeah, and we talk about a lot about how, not to be cute, but leaders who care about the well-being of their people, financial, physical, and mental well-being, and
Yes.
how that impacts the well-being of the family and the community as well, from belonging related to crime and healthcare and all sorts of stuff. Can you talk to that a little bit?
It was interesting. Earlier this month, I moderated a panel and spoke at an event for the governor of Ohio. Governor Mike DeWine sponsored the event, and the panel had everyone had small employers that are pioneering, like Nehemiah Manufacturing in Cincinnati. This is the Harvard Business School case study on fair chance, second chance hiring. JBM Packaging, which was a second generation business that only just started adopting it a few years ago. It's transformed the whole company. And then we're very, very fortunate to be joined by on the panel by Rodney McMullen, who's the CEO of Kroger. Right. This is assuming the acquisition of Albertsons goes through, this will be maybe the third or fourth largest employer in the United States. They'll have 600,000 or 700,000 employees. They're close to 400 today. I mean, and they all spoke, in some ways, they all spoke with the same voice, deep caring about their employees. And they don't even like calling them associates, calling them employees. They're associates. Or family members, or and they all talked about how they approach this. Kroger's their company purpose is feeding the human spirit. I mean, and you think about that. JBM Packaging used to have a purpose surrounding being a good envelope maker, which is their business, and it's become something. And and Nehemiah has this 8 pillars of support for their employees. They have picnics, they pack backpacks for kids going back to school. It's a very different approach, but I have to stress, it's not paternalistic. It's meeting people as equals, and this is not. This could be paternalistic. Oh, well, I worked for a place that gave turkeys to employees at Christmas, frozen turkeys, and yet, you couldn't address senior executives by their first name. Had to be Mrs. This, and dreadful culture.
Yeah.
This is the real deal. We are all in this together. We are all fellow human beings, and that comes across with the businesses that do this successfully. And look, the economist in me has to say there's a really good payback. That they have very, very low turnover rates among these employees, to your point earlier, and they have high productivity because people who care about their job, care about doing a good job, and stick with you tend to be really, really productive.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And Blue Zones, and one of the things that they talk about all the time is that the thing that fills people's hearts and souls more than anything is belonging.
Yes, yes.
And it's right there.
Yeah, and we've all felt it in life, and it's but a lot of people with criminal records have never belonged to a healthy community. They belong to unhealthy communities, gangs, and things like that. But so it's eye-opening. So many people that I've come across who have been justice impacted just were never really taught the concepts that we take for granted. There's a wonderful nonprofit in Minnesota called the Redemption Project, and they do in-prison training and then connect. And I can't say enough good about them. But I love, one of the things I love about that is they start with training on virtue.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to do the right thing? And how do you have a framework for making decisions? And for so many people who are in prison, they've never been taught to think that way. It's eye-opening for them, and many of them embrace it.
Yeah, it's so right on. We don't teach humanity anymore.
Yes.
Which is one word for all of that, if you will.
Yes.
And it's the foundation of everything. I mentioned this nonprofit that has this program, Nonflict, which is going to be taught to the formerly incarcerated also on how to engage in resolve conflict. And I've found for everybody, but especially minorities, if you will, women, minorities, formerly incarcerated, that they ask all the time, well, will they allow me to work on big projects? Will they, if there's a problem, who do I talk to? What do I say? And there's a choice now which company to go to. A company that has a program like Nonflict, where they've shown they're committed to having a way to resolve conflict and hear your voice, or the other one that says, oh, we're an open door policy, we'll figure it out, type of thing.
What's interesting is the costs of providing this kind of support may well go down. I had a wonderful demonstration of a AI program that helps people work through those. So if you're nervous about going to someone, you can go and ask questions like that. And this is new. The woman who's created it, Stephanie Sylvester, I think, is a genius, and it's early on, but it's just brilliant. I'm formerly incarcerated, and someone just asked me where I came from. What do I say?
Yeah, no, it is brilliant. I'd actually like to talk to you because Nonflict, I can't say it too loud, is actually on Alexa. Can't say it too loud, so pick it up. You can go on there and actually do it with yourself, how to resolve inner conflict. So she sounds brilliant, and that stuff helps. And we take for granted what we have. I know I didn't have at the kitchen table. My family wasn't entrepreneurial. My dad had a job. My mom worked. But I never learned about entrepreneurship, and that's not even close to formerly incarcerated. But even I felt that I didn't have the conversation. So imagine even 100 times worse than that.
Right. Yeah. No, it's really. But and then what you find, I mean, I went from I'm not going to say 0 to 60. I'm going to say 0 to 100 speed. I had no friends who had any justice impact. Didn't mean I didn't have friends who had done things, but no one, I guess, was caught, right? And then, in the Ivy League, misbehavior things. And I today count among my best friends people who've been formerly incarcerated, because the people who overcome those obstacles are the most stand-up people on earth.
100%.
And they've got hustle. They're funny. They know how to get things done because they've had to conquer all these odds. And people this quest of mine obviously is a part, doesn't always contribute to my career, and there's time, and I lose time with family sometimes, but I feel I'm the luckiest person on earth, because who would, in my age, gets to make all these great new friends. Yeah. So I feel like this has done more for me than I've done for any of my formerly incarcerated friends, for sure.
Yeah, I would second that motion, because I was going to talk about that we do a lot of work in diversity, whether it's an executive search or impact or whatever. And I grew up in Montreal, where we didn't even talk about diversity. We just wanted it, basically. Different food, different sports.
Oh, yeah. Montreal is a great city for diversity.
Just bring it on, baby, type of thing. And what you said is right on to one of the last points I want to bring up, is that we talk a lot about experiences and accomplishments, not years of experience, not that type of stuff. What experiences and the story and accomplishments you bring to the table. So talk a little bit more of what we're heading to there about the diversity of their skill sets and experiences that a formerly incarcerated has, that, adds to that individual's unique value that they can bring to whoever, even the other employees, because I've seen autistic persons with autism bring super value to other people and vice versa too.
There's one common adjective that employers use to describe their second chance employees. These are the employers who do it the right way. And they also use the word grit. It's a combination of determination and resilience. And boy, isn't that a great skill set? I mean, it's just kind of amazing. There's a gentleman, I'm struggling with his name. I think it's Joe Nixon, spelled Nickson, and he co-founded an advertising firm called Concreates. And we were at a conference. He said, there's 70 million people who have some kind of arrest or conviction record. Said that's a big part of the consumer population. How can we be good salesmen and marketers if we don't understand the experience of 70 million of our fellow consumers? And I think that's stuck with me. So some of it, this traditional advantage of diversity and real diversity, viewpoint diversity, life experience diversity, not superficial measures. There's a real value to a business because you understand your consumers better, the diversity of your consumers.
Malcolm Gladwell, and then I got one more question after this one. Malcolm Gladwell, I believe, said, we always look for the special person outside somewhere else to come in to bring expertise. We may have the biggest expert in the world here. We always look outside to bring someone in. And he said, if you want a story, you can just go to the CVS cashier and ask her story. And I'll bet you she'll tell you a good one too. Yeah.
No, absolutely right. So it's been, I'm a story collector in my books. I'm working on got some other books in the pipeline, and you tell stories of humanity, and I just hope I'm using my time effectively to have the greatest impact.
Well, you're doing it right now, right here. That's good. So I have one last question.
Sure.
Klein told me this after the year 2020, about 2020. He told me that was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought it was classic.
That's great. Yeah.
And so unprecedented 2020, 2021, 22, 23, amazingly enough, it feels like the pandemic was yesterday and forever back there.
And on a different planet. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And with all that, can you share with us what you're most grateful for and also what you're most hopeful for?
Well, I'm most grateful for my family. I just can't, that is, first and foremost in my world, the stability of my family, the belief in my family, both my belief in them and their belief in me, kind of frees me up to do all sorts of things that follow my passions. What I'm most hopeful for relates directly to this work. I believe the business community, and this is this fifth industrial revolution concept, the business community has not yet fully absorbed the consequences of our demographic profile, but they're getting there. This labor shortage is structural. It's not going away. We may or may not have a recession coming up. We will certainly have recessions in the future. We're going to go into them with labor shortages. We're going to come out with labor shortages. And it's going to go on, just look at statistics like percentage of your working age population as a percentage of your overall population. So how big could your labor force reasonably be to serve the needs of your all consumers? And it's going to be declining rapidly till roughly 2035, 2037, and then keep declining a little, just more gradually. That's the makings of a labor shortage. Mm-hmm. And when the business community finally accepts the labor shortage, we're good problem solvers. And the solution lies in giving people more opportunity to succeed and thrive. And so the business community has been absent from too many discussions. It's been defined by nonprofits, think tanks, and politicians. Nothing wrong with that, but the business community has to play a major role here, not just in employing people that they might not have otherwise employed in the past, not just in giving everyone advancement opportunities, but also in public policy. We will have a better country, and one that truly lives up to its aspiration to be the land of opportunity for all.
Yeah, well said. So the leaders who care will listen and learn and hopefully act at the same time. Thanks for being on the Leaders Who Care series. You deserve to be on here for sure.
I'd be nice. Thank you.
And appreciate you sharing all that. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mark.